Hello and thank you for joining us on the midweek edition of Journalists Hangout. I am Kemi Fola Adeyemo. Today on the program, federal government sheds light on the Azura power deal and the multi-million-dollar capacity charges in the power sector. And later on the show, Journalists Hangout midweek special focuses on the reconstruction of failed roads in the Akute-Alagbole axis of Ogun State. I'll be hanging out today with Babajide Kolade Otitoju, while Sam Ebemere will join us via Skype. Journalists Hangout starts now. Well, the power supply conundrum in Nigeria provides us with more questions than answers. One of the knotty issues is the multi-million-dollar electricity capacity charges inserted into the agreement signed with generation companies. The federal government says power companies' capacity charges, whether such thresholds are met or not. The question is, how did we get here? And that's what many Nigerians are asking. And that will be the focus of our discussion on the program today. The special advisor to the president on infrastructure, Ahmed Rufai Zakari, is joining us from Abuja via Skype as well. Just a little into the person of Mr. Zakari. He is the special advisor, as I had said, and before that, he had built an impressive career at General Electric, where he acquired extensive experience, expertise, and knowledge of electricity, as well as the oil and gas sector. From 2012 to 2014, he was the executive director and audit manager of Sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East division of General Electric. In 2015, he was appointed as the executive director and the chief operating officer of the same company, responsible for its gas power installation in Nigeria and South Africa, with more than 150 turbines and up to 8 gigawatts of installed capacity. In September 2019, he was appointed special advisor to the president on infrastructure. Thank you most kindly for joining us, Ahmed Rufai Zakari. Let's delve straight away into clearing the air on this lingering matter. So talking about the the Azura deal now in Edo to build an IPP over there in Edo. What can you tell us now about that, especially regarding whether indeed it was signed in the Goodluck Jonathan regime or during the administration of President Buhari?
Kemi, can you repeat the question?
We've seen the issue now being tackled at the Senate, especially calling for a review of that particular IPP deal. How do you like to begin in clearing the air?
Yes, Kemi, I think there's been a lot of discussion around the Azura deal and capacity payments. One thing that should be recognized is that deal is actually fairly standard in terms of our global practices for power purchase agreements. As you've said, in my prior career with GE, we saw many of these. Essentially, when you're going to invest so much money to build infrastructure, the banks that provide financing for those projects, in order to secure loans, banks need to be sure that they'll get their repayment. So the structure for the Azura deal was such that there was a guaranteed amount that was assumed would be always taken up by the Nigerian government, through embed to the discos. And to the extent that's not taken up, then those additional payments must occur, because essentially you would not have received the financing, almost $900 million to build that power plant, without any assurance of payment. Furthermore, one thing that was actually very good about that transaction was the existence of the put-call option agreement, or PCOA. Is actually fairly new. It was novel at the time to that agreement. Usually in project finance deals that I've had experience with globally, if you sign a PPA and you are unable to pay and you default, you must pay penalties, at times very large penalties. The PCOA, as it was structured in Nigeria first with Azura in 2014, allowed for you to pay the penalty and actually take back the power plant. And that PCOA is derived by a formula. I know there's been many discussions about a number of 1.2 billion, but that actually is not an accurate figure, as that formula changes on a daily basis. And lastly, these two agreements were executed in 2013 for the PPA and 2014 for the PCOA, that formed the basis for the transaction. And essentially, the Buhari administration, upon assumption, worked out the final details to issue a legal opinion and proceed. But really, the core of agreements in the power sector to build a power plant are the PPA and the PCOA, and those commitments had already been made. Yes. Now, where you have a challenge is when you cannot take up the power, or you're unable to pay for that power. But it's a fairly standard structure for the transaction.
Okay, before I come back to the studio now, BKO is here with me, and there's also Sam Ibemire. But let me also ask now, looking at this charges now that the government is said to be paying every month now, $30 million on record, or going by the reports. Well, some have said that is inimical to the nation's economy. How do you react?
So I think we need to be careful when we throw around these figures. You can imagine that the cost of the electricity is the cost of the electricity. So $30 million per month is what that plant should earn at its full capacity. As of June, they were actually dispatched, and these numbers are available at TCN, by 90% plus. I think it was about 92%. So it's not like we're not taking this power. But one thing we need to be careful of is we understand that we live in a subsidy regime for the power sector. So even if you end up taking the power, there is a portion of that power that the government covers. We know that we're not in a cost-reflective tariff regime as of yet. But as I said, even in June, 90% of that power was taken and utilized by the country. It made up about 10% of the capacity that we experienced. So the power was consumed and it was paid for. So to make it seem as if the government is paying $30 million per month for power that is not generated or taken, I think.
All right. Ahmed Zakari, thank you. Well, okay, but we'll still put you on hold. Let me just compare your report now, so to speak, with what BKO is analyzing on this subject. For you, BKO, it's good to have you join us on the program. For you, what is critical as Nigerians, ponder on this deals? What is critical now?
I think for Nigerians, the pain that they feel is the fact that generally electricity supply is not sufficient. It's not sufficient at all. And that is why when people hear all these big figures, their blood boils, because they know that we don't get enough supply of electricity, and they are wondering whether there's actually value for money. But indeed, today is actually a day for Mr. Zakari, and there are other issues. Apart from Azura, there is the capacity charges, payments that we make to other power plants in the country. And people are saying that this itself promotes corruption, that sometimes those power plants are not working at full capacity, yet we still make payment to them. Since he works in that sector, he needs to clear this. We need to clear this with him. Are we making those payments? Are the power plants falsifying their figures just so that they can take easy money from the Nigerian government? So this is what I would like to ask
Ahmed
Zakari, now that we have him with us today.
Can I respond?
Yeah, did you hear me?
Absolutely. Please respond.
Yeah, I did hear you. BKO, very great question. I think you're covering some of the salient issues that are needed to really understand some of our challenges.
Yes.
The concept of a capacity charge, as I said, is something that when you're doing project finance to build power plants, you need to do. And investors usually need this assurance to put their money in. I think Nigeria is actually in a fortunate position given our difficulty in taking power. You can imagine a country of almost 200 million people that is consuming only 4,000 megawatts. And we also, despite the fact of having, almost 15,000 megawatts of installed capacity, we're only taking a fraction of that. So we're not really in a situation where we're even consuming enough power. But back to the concept of a capacity charge, when the privatization was done, and plants like Ugeli, plants like Sapele were privatized, there was a requirement that they actually have effective contracts before they receive their capacity charge. And some of this included firm gas supply agreements. Many of those plants have not met that requirement yet. So the majority of the 20 plus power plants we have in Nigeria actually do not operate on a capacity charge. The power plants that have capacity charges are Azura, as we've mentioned. We have, a capacity charge on Calabar. We have the AFAM 6 power plant and the Okpai power plant, and then the two SEPCO power plants with, Pacific, Olorushogu and Omotosho. Now, why I say we sort of dodged a bullet is you can imagine if all of our 20 plus power plants had capacity charges, with the fact that we're only taking about a third of our installed capacity, we would be bankrupt from the power sector in no time. The Azura contract, the Calabar contract, and the others that I mentioned with AFAM 6, Okpai, and the Olorushogu and Motosho power plants, per the NERC dispatch order, it actually prioritizes power plants with capacity charges. And again, this is all available information on the NERC website, to ensure that we take all of that energy first. So if you look at the dispatch order, we take the hydros, then we take contracts with effective PPAs with capacity, then we take the others. But I'll tell you that this government has actually pushed back on instituting capacity charges because of the concern around the ability to take the power until we integrate that value chain for the power sector better. But you can imagine that if you talk to APGC, the Genco Association, they're actually arguing that why don't we have capacity charge for the remaining power plants? But as we've said, to be fiscally prudent and to allow for us to ensure that the value chain works better, we're working very assiduously to improve our transmission and distribution capacity. Just today, the Siemens Phase 1 contract was approved at FEC. And we're going to try to improve that integration of the value chain as a matter of priority for this government.
Okay, absolutely. And then, so you've talked about, what the government is doing to improve the generation of power generally. But, talking about this issue of Nigeria never actually, exceeding the more than 5,373 megawatts of power, what specifically is the government doing to address that? Ahmed Zachary, please carry on.
Okay. Can you hear me?
You're live. Yes. Thank you. You're live.
Perfect. So I was saying the power sector requires in parallel. Unfortunately, what we've had in the past is we had a boost in generation investment, and the transmission and distribution investment lagged behind. What has happened is with this administration, we've looked at this as a critical issue, and working with the World Bank, the Africa Development Bank and other donor agencies and international development agencies, we raised about $1.6 billion for TCN to invest in the Abuja Loop, to invest in the North Core line, to invest in the Lagos Ibadan lines, to improve that infrastructure. We've put a lot of money through the Niger Delta Power Holding Company as well. And where we actually have had the deficit in investment after finding this 1.6 billion plus and the Siemens deal in addition on transmission is on the distribution side. So what we're working to do is through the Siemens PPI, through an arrangement with the World Bank called Distribution, Rehabilitation, and Expansion, we're aiming to put another $2 billion of financing into the distribution sector. So, this anomaly that I talk about where you invested very much in generation initially over the years and you allowed the other segments to lag behind, we're very aggressively trying to integrate that through the reforms that the government is working on.
And then let's pan now to the critical subject of the Mambila project. What is the Buhari administration doing on that? People have also asked that when will that project be realized?
You can imagine that one of the cornerstones on infrastructure for this government has been ensuring that transactions and projects that have been laid dormant are revitalized. So there's a presidential committee on the Mambila project that's been established. It's led by the Honorable Minister of Power, who knows the terrain very well, being from Taraba. There's ongoing work around resolving some of the legal issues that have bedeviled the transaction, as well as securing the remaining steps for the financing. But apart from that, there's work being done locally as well on resettlements. So there's quite a bit of activity going on, and this government is committed to that project. We've worked through the financing with China Exim and some of the financiers. And as soon as these issues are resolved through the work that the Honorable Minister of Power is leading, we will be able to break ground and kick off that project. But more importantly, as I said, we need to have the infrastructure in transmission and distribution to be able to take this power.
We'll come back to transmission later, but I want us to still go back to the Mambila power plant. It's something that is of interest to me. I was there last June. I went to the dam site, and I saw that no road actually leads to the place. The question I'm asking is, when do you envisage that we will begin to do something that people can see about that hydropower plant? When are we likely to kick, or when are we likely to see some form of activity suggesting that the Mambila power plant is kicking off?
Yep. FKO, as I said, is a critical priority. If not for the lingering, remaining issues with the legal issues that we anticipate should be resolved before the end of the year, we would have made more progress. But you can also appreciate that large infrastructure projects almost spend as much time in planning and sourcing finance as you do in building. It's a very complex project. It requires resettlement. It requires, it required us to work with the consortium of the Chinese to work together. And it's also requiring us to settle legal issues that we inherited from prior administrations. We've made the most progress out of any administration to realizing this project, and we're very confident that by the end of the year, we should be able to make enough progress to allow that project to formally commence. This is barring, obviously, the challenges that we need to resolve with the legal and settlement issues from prior exposure that we've had. And this buttresses the point as to why when people talk about unilaterally canceling contracts, we've seen what happened with PNID. People say just unilaterally cancel Azura. This government is a government that is responsible and wants to, allow the rule of law and ensure that contracts that are binding on this country, if they need to be restructured, are restructured in a legal way, or we will resolve the issues before we move to execution. But we're not going to come in and go through extrajudicial processes that will leave Nigerians in the future scratching their heads as to why the government made moves that are costing billions of dollars. We see the current problems we're dealing with.
All right. So, Ahmad Zakari, please let me put you on hold once again. Let me hear from Sam Ebemere, who is also joining us via Skype. So, well, Sam, what do you have to say? Has the issue been cleared enough, looking at the analysis of Ahmad Zakari here?
Well, I'd like to say that it's quite revealing, the information that Zakari has shared with us. I think he has put some more light on a lot of issues, especially misconceptions, about the power sector, in Nigeria. It's nice to hear, him say that from the look of things, it would appear that everything appears, coordinated. But on the outside, the average Nigerian who is watching doesn't seem to agree with much of this. He's interested in power supply. He's interested in the amount of electricity that's available to him to use on a daily basis. And I like to cite an example here. Zakari talked about, the relationship between power generation, transmission, and distribution. And he did acknowledge that the government appears to be having very serious issues at the distribution end, which is that part of it that touches the everyday life, of Nigerians. It would be nice, to get firm guarantees or assurances that the effort, the energy that has been put into power generation and transmission, trickles down the line. I've listened to, operators within the distribution sector, and all we hear is that it doesn't seem that we have the right kind of synergy between those who are stakeholders within the distribution, sector and power generation. Everybody seems to be, speaking from a purely independent, and Nigerians would like to see better synergy, better coordination, so that there is, a straight approach to it. I want to acknowledge that these things have to do with investment decisions, but then we want to see synergy, we want to see coordination. So it's nice hearing Zakari talk about what the presidency is doing or what is being done, at the level of government to get this, sector going. There's a whole lot that is wrong, and I think that is why, the lawmakers are concerned about some things that are not very clear about the way we have executed contracts or the way we have, gotten into negotiations to execute contracts that have to do with, power generation, transmission, and distribution. Nigerians want to receive assurances that if not today or tomorrow, in the very near future, one can get back home, switch on the lights, and be assured that he can get, even if it's not 24 hours, at least 16, 17, 18 hours of the day.
Absolutely.
That would help. That will help Nigerians. That will help our businesses.
Indeed.
And that is the area that Nigerians are interested in.
Absolutely, Sam Ebemere there. And, well, over to you, Mr. Zakari. One point from Sam Ebemere there talks about, what this all means for the average Nigerian who uses power. We all know how important that is. And also the issue of coordination. That has also been seen to be lacking as Nigeria, of course, continues to push towards, better power in the country.
Yes, I follow Mr. Ebemere, and I think, he always has insightful comments, and, this hits to the heart of the issues. Look, this sector is very complicated, and if you even go and read the Power Sector Reform Act of 2005, you'll see that the powers are very split. Because of the privatization, the National Council on Privatization is involved, and BPE, who kind of oversees the discourse. The regulator is there that's supposed to provide, the structure for the market. The Ministry of Power is supposed to provide policy direction. You have, in latter years, the Central Bank of Nigeria having to step in to pay for deficits in the value chain. And you have the Finance Ministry that's been doing a wonderful job partnering with the Power Ministry to bring financing to the foreground. You also then have the Niger Delta Power Holding Company that, has a large share. It's actually the largest installed base gas company in sub-Saharan Africa, with almost 5 gigawatts of installed capacity. Unfortunately, a lot of that is not dispatched, but that also brought in the National Economic Council, given the governors have, half of the shares of that Niger Delta Power Holding Company. So what we've had is, challenges in coordination in the past, as you've said. President Buhari, looking at this at the start of this, year, he required that we have a power sector reform coordination working group led by the vice president, and all of these parties actually sit around the table and we resolve issues. I've never felt more confident about the coordination in the sector with the wisdom that President Buhari had in setting up that coordination group. So I think coordination, you'll see better results. We're already seeing better results in terms of, the policy direction that we're having. Now, in terms of this concept of what do Nigerians feel? Look, I've said it, not because I'm in government. Nigerians should be impatient. Nigerians are obviously frustrated. The government realizes that. But we also need to be careful. We spend so much time on these shows talking about this 4,000 megawatts to 15,000, hopefully maybe 30,000 megawatts if we continue to do well, that the on-grid sector covers, right? And this is for majority of people that are in urban areas. We should not forget 80 million Nigerians don't have access to power, right? In some estimates. They're the rural poor in communities all around. And, it doesn't, if I go to my village, and my town in Jigawa, it won't take me more than 30 minutes, going out into the hinterland before I see a location. 10, 15 villages without any access to power is problematic. It impacts healthcare as well. This administration has said, yes, we're doing all we can with Siemens, with the World Bank, with the Africa Development Bank to right the infrastructure gaps that we have on grid, to make sure that 4,000, 5,000 megawatts can be boosted to 15 plus by the end of this administration. And we're putting our money where our mouths are. But you should remember that those people that are not having access to the grid, they need help. And that's why, as part of the economic sustainability plan that the president approved, and that committee that is led by His Excellency, the Vice President, we said that we're going to provide 240 billion naira of financing for the off-grid sector, so we can build mini grids and we can build, solar home system connections for those rural poor. So as we're working on what we need for industrialization on grid, His Excellency, the President has said, make sure you don't forget about, the poor
Indeed.
and underprivileged people that don't have access to the grid. So we're trying to do both. And you'll continue to see this government, put finances and effort behind these commitments. There's been challenges, obviously, and like I said, we should all be frustrated, we should all be
Indeed.
impatient,
Right.
but we are doing our work to ensure that we can quickly make changes.
Thank you, Zachary. We, as someone in that sector, we want to ask you a simple question. Why is it that the transmission leg of the power chain has not been able to wheel more than 5,373 megawatts. Even though the generating companies have the capacity to generate a lot more than that. What really is the problem? What are the problems that we face?
BK, apologies. Before Mr. Zachary, answers that question, we really must take a quick break, and then we'll return to this subject and the question that BK asked. Please stay with us. You're watching Journalists Hangout, and we still have Ahmed Zachary, who is the President's Special Advisor on Infrastructure, as well as our contributors in-house, BKO and Sami Bemere. All right, so over to you, Mr. Zachary. BKO was asking you a question before we went on the break. How do you respond?
Yes.
I hope you. Okay.
Thank you for that question.
Yes.
Yes. Like I said, I think there's, whenever people think about the power sector, the easiest thing to handle is generation, right? Especially think about in Nigeria, we have gas, we have land, people say, oh, just go build a power plant. And we so often forget about the fact that you need to wheel and then distribute the power. And we went through a phase, and, President Obasanjo at the time rightfully realized that we had a deficit in the power sector, but we put a big effort on building power plants, right? We then also, through privatization, sold power plants, and these investors have done, based on what I saw with the National Council on Privatization and BPE, from what the government has audited, they've actually increased capacity. If you look at Mainstream in Kaenji, so we've now kept getting more generation. But people should not forget, the year before the Buhari administration came into power, the budget for TCN was $25 million, less than $30 million. So you can imagine where we had spent years spending billions of dollars building power plants, and the transmission investment, in a year before this government came in 2015, we had $25 million to a whole TCN. We realized that was a problem. The donors realized that was a problem. Our international partners, as well as, the leadership in the power ministry, understood that was a problem. So we now went on this large blitz to get financing for the transmission sector. The Abuja Loop project is ongoing. We have North Core. We have the Lagos-Ibadan work that is ongoing. We're working on getting a SCADA system that will communicate. That's just on the financing we have direct to TCN from the World Bank, AFDB, JICA, and others. In addition, we've now gone and we're working with Siemens on this, Nigerian Siemens, plan to work on getting our wheeling capacity and our transmission capacity up. But we're not going to make the same mistakes twice. We're now trying to carry along distribution as well. But this was many years of underinvestment, FKO, that we're trying to recover from. And that's why, in addition, we now have worked with the World Bank to see an AFDB, if we can get another $1.5 billion that we can give to the discos at low interest rates, very controlled, that they can invest in the distribution.
Basically,
and
Ahmad,
Siemens also has a distribution component.
Basically, Ahmad, what you are saying is the transmission leg does not have the capacity to wheel what is generated. I've said it before that the weakest link in the whole power loop is transmission, and people kept arguing. But I've seen a Siemens report that showed clearly that in terms of capacity, in terms of the megawatts that each of those legs can deliver, that the transmission leg is the weakest. This is basically what I want to establish. If it is clear that we do not have the capacity to wheel a lot of what is generated, then Nigerians will understand and stop imagining that 15,000 megawatts or 10,000 megawatts can suddenly happen. So I'm happy. I thank you for the clarity that you are giving us. Nigerians also are asking the question that what exactly will Siemens come to do in our country? I need you to give us clarity on this, because what they are saying is that Siemens is fantastic at building equipment, at building machines, but that it does not have the track record for distribution, for managing electricity. In fact, someone compares Siemens with Boeing, saying Boeing is the world's best airplane maker, but that Boeing has never had a history of running the aviation sector anywhere.
Yeah. Look, I think we should not sell ourselves short as Nigerians. In my time in government, coming from the private sector, we have very capable, individuals and organizations, right? So the fact that we buy equipment from Siemens doesn't mean that we don't have a transmission company of Nigeria that is going to work to ensure the substations are installed and the lines are appropriately managed. But again, we're also not putting all our eggs in one basket. As I've said, we went out on a blitz with the international partners. We have about $1.6 billion that we're spending on transmission, including technology with SCADA. We didn't stop there. The president, worked with, the German government to get us Siemens, which will add additional investment. But I also continue to say that, yes, transmission is weak, but distribution is also weak, and we're not going to make the same mistake twice. So we're still going back to the AFDB and World Bank to seek, almost $1.5 billion to improve the distribution infrastructure. We're hoping by the end of the year we can come to terms with that as we continue on reforms.
Okay.
And then Siemens also has a distribution leg, but you should, trust that, yes, they'll bring.
All right, Ahmed Rufai Zachary, the special advisor to the president on infrastructure. We must thank you very much for the points and the contributions on TVC News Journalists Hangout. Thank you very much. You have our best wishes indeed. Apologies there. We had a little connectivity issue now. Otherwise, we would have had the tail end of his last point. Okay. Ahmed Zachary, we were just about rounding up on this subject, but let me just have your final words now before we move on.
Yes.
All right, please carry on. Next few seconds, let's just do away with this. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'd say, as we wrap up is, we are working as a government to ensure that Nigerians pay for power that they receive. And we're working very closely with the discos and with the regulator to ensure that Nigerians that receive high quality of service, they should pay for that service. Nigerians that don't, we're going to ensure that they get that better quality of service through this service-based tariff structure that we're working on. It incentivizes performance. It doesn't allow discos to charge without performing. But as I've said, we're very big on infrastructure for the electricity sector, and I would like to continue to engage, in support of the government with TVC and others to make sure that we're getting the right word out. But we are going to keep our contracts. We're not going to unilaterally, cancel contracts, and we're going to make sure they work for the Nigerian people.
All right. Thank you very much.
So much.
It did. Thanks for all the points and, of course, your contributions on the program. Ahmed Rufai Zachary there, the President's Special Advisor on Infrastructure, talking about the crucial subject of power supply, power generally in Nigeria. All right, so today's episode of Journalists Hangout, midweek special, focuses on the reconstruction of failed roads in the Akute-Alagbole axis of Ogun State. So following our reports on the deplorable condition of roads along this Lagos-Ogun boundary communities, some respite is coming the way of residents and road users now. The reconstruction of the Akute-Alagbole road in Ogun State has commenced to the relief of the people there. TVC News' Abiola Sholanke filed in this report.
This is the Alagbole Akute area of Ogun State. This road has remained a sore point for a very long time in Ogun State, as road users go through agony in a bid to get to their destination. TVC News drew the attention of the Ogun State government to this road on a number of occasions, and now the government is beginning to do something to ameliorate the pains of the people. This road is now wearing a new look as opposed to the last time we visited. The construction of roads in Akute, Denro Shashi, Lambe, Ajuwon, Adiyon areas of Ogun started under the past administration in the state, but the project could not continue due to some unforeseen challenges. Though work has now started in some of the communities, TVC News understands there are plans by the Dakbo Abiodun government to complete the abandoned roads.
Wow, I'm so much happy seeing this now. That is my heart.
Residents here are more than happy that these roads that have huge craters are already getting attention.
We are happy, though it's not completed, but we are happy already because we suffered on this particular road, and we pray that they will finish it on time and we will continue to enjoy it. In fact, the government is really trying now. We can see the dividend of democracy now.
We thank God that the government of Dapo Abiodun is doing a great thing. I can say it's breaking the jinx because we are passing through a lot of pains connecting our homes and offices. But this is something great. 3 days ago, I was at Alakwara Junction, which has been highly impassable en route Ishashi Denro. But now we can see that even motor vehicles, riders, they move at great speed. And we have heard that this is palliative. We are expecting the reconstruction work so that in the whole of this area we'll be able to enjoy more.
With this part of the road almost completed, the usual congestion faced by commuters has been minimized. There is almost free flow of vehicular movement on one lane of the road, just as the other lane is under construction. The ongoing project was also applauded by some of the business owners I spoke with.
The way the road was before is very, very bad, and it affects our business by us visiting the mechanic every week because it affects the tires. So we spend a lot on our tires most of the times. And now that they are doing it, we're very happy. So we want to say big kudos to our governor for what he has done. We really appreciate it. So I hope they will not just pour the stone and go. I hope they will tie it and fix it the way a normal road should be.
We have to thank the government. And now they've started it. We have to pray to God for them to be able to finish it. Not, to start it at the end of the day, then leave it halfway. This is the only thing we can enjoy from the government.
This road bad, no be so we don't suffer. This road don't spoil our machine, spoil our motor. We don't enjoy. If we rain for people that suffer, we cannot go out. We there for good day. You can't be like we there for desert. We don't suffer for this good day too much. But I'm happy. The way I see it, they want to do this road. God will bless the person who will try to do this road in the name of Jesus. So may they all do this road for us so that we can enjoy it.
Ogun State Commissioner for Works and Infrastructure, Ade Akinsoya, who was on tour of the area, speaks on the progress made so far.
As you're coming from the Yakoyo Bridge, you could see that it's a different look right now, that they've done a lot of palliative work. And this is going to continue. The condition of the road was more or less not motorable. So the directive from His Excellency, Prince Dapo Abiodun, MFR, was we need to provide immediate relief before we commence the final construction. So part of the work today is the palliative work, which we can do now or during the rainy season. Then as soon as the rain stops or subsides, we continue with the permanent work.
He also acknowledged the pains of the road users and appealed for patience with government during the duration of the rehabilitation exercise.
People have been clamoring or crying for the condition of the road. But from the pulse of talking to the people, you can see it's a different attitude. Things have changed significantly, and it will continue. So it's a process. Unfortunately, it can't happen overnight.
Although there are challenges encountered by workers during the execution of this project.
Ogun State is asking, please cooperate with us, especially the Okada people, because they are sometimes very reckless. But the commuters should expect this, that very soon the permanent solution is coming.
This road project has remained one of the most talked about lately, and the state government is assuring commuters it would revive it this time around. The special advisor on women affairs to the state governor also assured the residents of prompt completion of the project.
There is virtually no pliable road, and we are talking about the constituency that is the closest to the seat of government in Lagos State. The proximity is not in doubt. Between Akute and Alausa is less than 20 minutes if the road is good. But unfortunately, our people working in Lagos, when it's so obvious when you get to the end of Lagos, you will know, because you begin to ply the bad, the unmotorable road. So for me today, I am so glad that the governor has come to intervene.
Relief is gradually coming the way of residents of this community as works have finally started on these abandoned projects. They hope that the government will see to the completion this time around. Abiola Sholanke, TVC News, Alagbole, Ogun State.
Indeed, relief for many residents of this very vital road, as aptly described by the government. Quickly, Sam Ebemere, what do you make of this work in progress?
Straight to the point. It is gladdening, and then you could feel that, from the voices that, we heard. Citizens are actually not asking for too much from their leaders. A mere palliative job, you can feel the excitement. What more would happen if much is done, to touch or impact lives? So it's clear that Nigerians are not asking for too much wherever they are, in Lagos, in Ogun, in the north and elsewhere. They just want government to impact their lives. It's gladdening. I'm excited. I don't live in that state, but I have friends who live in the border communities. And the story of Akute has been one that has been out there, not very pleasant. So it's good to know. It's good to hear that government has, commenced work, on those roads. You can tell that people are just too excited to feel the impact of government. Nigerians are not asking for too much. Roads, water, hospitals, just name it, infrastructure, and it's not really much. It's not really much. So I would like to commend the Dapo Abiodun government for taking this for taking this initiative.
All right.
Like many others who spoke said, they want to be sure that this is fully executed.
Absolutely.
Just don't pour concrete on the road.
All right,
okay?
absolutely.
Get the job
Sani
done.
Bemere, let's run along now. We are inching to the top of the hour. I want to also hear from BKO. The government has said it will clear gutters and drainages whilst it does this work. How do you relate with this work going on?
Yes, this is what we expected. The government has shown that it's a responsive one. It's a government that listens. Governor Abiodun was watching Journalists Hangout when we ran that story, and he felt he needed to do something quickly. And he told his commissioner to get down to the place, to be physically present, see the road, and start doing something. And that's what we've seen. I personally saw the commissioner on site, on a Saturday, just after we ran the story. So when we do our job as journalists to alert government to the things that it needs to do, and government responds in a positive way like this, it makes us happy. It makes us enjoy the job. So we are happy with the governor for what he has done, and I'm sure that the people of Akute, Alagbole, Adiyan, Ajuwon, all of those places, they would continue to pray for him, because they can see clearly that he has listened to their
Absolutely,
cries. Yes.
absolutely, indeed. So it's kudos all over, and talk about impact in journalism as this issue was constantly brought to the fore of government, and now we see action. So indeed, more encouragement to the government to see this through. That's our package for you on Journalists Hangout today. You can join us tomorrow for another episode of the program. And you can also watch Journalists Hangout on other platforms showing on the screen and on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. Remember, our feedback channel is Journalists Hangout at tvcnews.tv. Before we go, a quick and a big thank you now to our contributors on the program today. Sabi Bemere there from via Skype, and of course the government official there, Ahmed Rufai Zachary, not forgetting BKO in the studio here. Thanks to you all. I'm Kemi Foladeyemo. Bye for now, and God bless Nigeria.